Good morning. Welcome to Berkeley College. We're sorry we're experiencing some technical difficulties, and we're sorry that we came in late, but welcome to Berkeley College. Our college motto is "Your potential is our promise." My name is Dr. Sharon McLennan-Weir. I'm the Director of Disability Services for the college. I will be your moderator for this ADA event. This event is titled Race, Gender, Sexual Orientation, Disability, the Intersection of Social Justice. Thank you for participating. We have over 350 participants from all over the country, including countries of the United Kingdom and Singapore. We're so happy that you're able to attend, and we welcome all of you. On July 26, 1990, President George H.W. Bush signed the Americans with Disabilities Act into law. This happened because many advocates for people with disabilities lobbied and protested for equal access to an environment that was full of barriers. Some great advocates, such as Judy Newman and others, pushed for the creation of this legislation. This law consisted of 4 titles covering provisions: Title I, Employment; Title II, State and Local Governments; Title III, Public Accommodations and Commercial Facilities; and finally, Title IV, Telecommunications. Today, we recognize this momentous act, and we hope that this presentation will assist all individuals who know, who work, or live with a person with a disability that access to employment, technology, and the environment is critical for every American. Before we begin, I just want to go over the accessibility options available for this presentation. First, all participants who pre-registered for this event were emailed an agenda and bio speakers information last night. If you did not pre-register for this event, don't worry, we still have you covered. Please email Georgia, like the state, _Pilling, PILLING, at Berkeley, BERKEY, college.edu. She'll be more than happy to email you the document so you can follow along. Second, all participants will be muted for this event. For those participants who use screen reading technology, don't worry, you'll still be able to hear all notifications through your Zoom screen. Third, the company, AI Media, will be providing live closed captioning for this event. They are working on getting into the event right now. You can turn the closed captioning feature on or off by using your Zoom controls. The fourth, ASL Sign Language Interpretation in English will be provided by Rodney Libon. If you want to pin your view, please follow the 3 dots that's next to his picture. Fifth, if you have any questions during this presentation, please put them in the question and answer section, the question and answer section box. Vincent Moss will be presenting all questions during the question and answer segment of this presentation. Now, I would like to take the opportunity to introduce a wonderful person. He's our leader, our director, our visionary person who believes that all of our students have the ability to achieve a degree, but more importantly, they have the opportunity to obtain gainful employment. This is our wonderful colleague, guider, and visionary, President Michael J. Smith.
Thank you. Thanks, Sharon. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be with all of you. At Berkeley College, we're really proud to be celebrating 30 years of the Americans with Disability Act. As Sharon mentioned, when President Bush signed the act in July of 2020, he called the legislation a great equalizer, and it was really meant to raise people with disabilities above the wall of exclusion, as it was phrased at the time. Now, we know that we've come a long way, but we all know there's much further we need to go to ensure that equality inclusion is such basic things as healthcare and education, employment opportunities for everyone, especially people with disabilities. According to the 2010 census, there were 57 million Americans, or about 19% of our population, who had a disability. And that meant there was about 23 million individuals in the workforce who are labeled or identified as disabled. Berkeley College prepares students to achieve lifelong success, dynamic careers through education and hands-on career preparation. So we take diversity, equity, and inclusion really seriously. And that's really why we're here as part of Sharon's programming that she's been doing over the last number of years. How do we ensure that the next 30 years and beyond for people with disabilities are going to be shielded from discrimination, and they have the ability to really thrive in every aspect of society? How do we guarantee that the ADA law achieves what it was intended to achieve, which is reasonable accommodations for the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness? You all know education is a game changer, but it's up to all of us to elevate our voices. We can do this through a civil dialogue and by exercising particularly our right to vote. Voting ensures that the civil liberties of everyone is protected because ADA benefits everyone. Dr. McLennan Weir, she wears a lot of hats, and she's our Director of Disabilities at Berkeley, and she ensures that every one of our students has access to educational accommodations to guide them to the graduation stage and into meaningful careers. She's an educational leader, she's a disability right advocate. She really works hard to raise the awareness of people with disabilities, particularly their right to vote. She's been a volunteer with Rev Up in Westchester, and on behalf of myself, on behalf of Berkeley College, Sharon just does a great job for Berkeley students, and I'm so proud to say that I'm on her team. Let's talk about 30 years ago. I don't think there's any of us that could have imagined in even March of this year what we'd be like today, that we'd be sitting, in our homes, not really traveling all that much, and the things that we're going through. I don't even know what the next 3 months are going to be like. But think about 30 years ago and what 1990 was like. In 1990, we had the reunification of Germany. The World Wide Web really was in its infancy, and the very first web browsers came out 30 years ago. Can you imagine a life without web browsers now, and what your life would be like without that? Some of the great interests and where there's some great opportunities going forward. The Human Genome Project, where they had the ability to decode DNA. Some of the opportunities that we have for that going forward as far as extending life and extending conditions for dealing with various different challenges that individuals have in their lives. It's amazing to think where we've come so far over the last 30 years and where things are headed, certainly, even as soon as the next 3 months. And, thinking about how much things have changed, in 1990 was the highest selling year for the Encyclopedia Britannica. When was the last time that you saw a physical encyclopedia? Things have changed. We know that the accommodations for individuals with disabilities have changed dramatically over the last 30 years, over the last 5 years, and one can only imagine what the next year is going to be like. And certainly in the time, I think, the changes and the challenges that we're going through right now with the coronavirus has opened, I think, a lot of people's eyes as to what can really be done in sort of the defined constraints of someone's own home and being able to work from home. I think this in and of itself will create a lot of opportunities for individuals who may not necessarily in the past had the ability to really get to a work site. And I think the opportunities are going to be really expanding. So for every challenge and cloud, there's rain and flowers. I see positive things coming of that. And I think also too, some of the research that's being done into the viruses, I think will help us with some of the other issues and challenges that folks have from a health perspective. So I'm going to call on all of you to listen to Sharon's call today and really enjoy what our speakers have to say. Listen, learn, and share your voices. It's important that you do something and you take action. Every one of us needs to ensure that the rights of people with disabilities are preserved and expanded, and make sure that the ADA does what it's intended to do, which is to lift individuals above the wall of exclusion and into places of inclusion. So I'm really looking forward to hearing the balance of what Sharon and Dr. Simi Linton and Dustin Gibson have to say. So enjoy, listen, and make sure you take action today. So thank you for the opportunity, Sharon, for putting together this panel. I'm very much looking forward to hearing what everyone has to say.
Thank you, President Smith. Thank you for your great welcome and encouraging words. So we're gonna begin our presentation. I just wanted to let you guys know that the presentation will be done in 3 segments. The first segment will be talking about diversity aspects for people with disabilities. They face a lot of hurdles in our society because of multiple diversities. I will be presenting that piece. The second part will be the social justice part, talking about the social justice impact regarding ADA. Dr. Simon Linton and Mr. Dustin Gibson will be speaking on that. And then the third part will be your question and answer segment, where you will take the opportunity to post your questions in the question and answer box, and Vincent Moss will be posing the questions to the panelists. So so we'll begin now. So just to self-disclose to the audience, I am a totally blind person. I am a Black woman, and I'm also, I'm sorry, I'm trying to think about my aspects of diversity. I am also a woman, okay? So in talking about aspects of diversity, I definitely do have the trifecta effect. And in looking at what we're going to present to you now, you're going to see that someone in my situation will have great challenges in our current employment climate. So Vincent, if you can bring up the first slide, I will start to begin our presentation piece. So as I said, you'll see the first slide, and the first slide has a thermometer. I thought that would be really apt because of our current pandemic. Most of you have heard that people with who are minorities are very much impacted by the pandemic. So here on the slide, we have a thermometer. And we kind of dissected this thermometer into looking at people from different membership groups, okay? So average temperature is 98.6%. So if you think about oppression, as oppression is faced in our society, it rises, okay? So based on your membership group, it's gonna get more hot and more intense for you. The more the visual characteristics you possess in this society, the greater rate of prejudice, discrimination, and oppression that the individual face. So for average temperature, in our society, the average groups, you will see the white race is the dominant race, male gender is a dominant group, heterosexualism is so if you're a heterosexual person, you're in a dominant class, and able-bodied status is the dominant class. So at the next level, as we look at how the temperature rises in our society, so if we have about 100% would be the next step. If a person comprises racial groups of people from Asian ethnicity, Pacific Islanders, Native American, Hispanic, then the next characteristic of a minority group we have women. We also have a sexual orientation, bisexual, and then we have people that have temporary disability status, like someone who has a broken limb. So again, keep in mind that your minority status is also going to precipitate the type of language that you use, the level of education you receive, the social class that you're in, the religious affiliation that you're part of, and even where you live. Okay, people cannot create their narrative or create their own story or contribute to society if there is racism, sexism, heterosexualism, and ableism. So it's very important to keep that in mind. So minority groups that face the most oppression right now in our society based on their membership because they don't have that dominant status. And keep in mind that this level of oppression is a social constructive idea. So people that are Black, part of the Black racial group, also they are transgendered individuals. In looking at sexual orientation, those individuals that identify as lesbian, gay, I have lesbian, gay, bisexual is in the 100% category. Transgendered is also in the next in this category. We also have intersect and questioning. Those individuals would be highly affected for 101 degrees plus. And the last characteristics, of course, is people with disabilities. If you have an obvious disability, that's a visual disability. And most recently, people that have psychiatric disabilities, especially as we are facing this pandemic, we see a higher incidence of psychiatric disabilities and learning disabilities. Those individuals have greater obstacles as they try to get into our society of employment. Okay, Vincent, if you can go to the next slide. So let's talk about some of the ideologies that we see here in the United States. So again, we are based on an individualistic framework here in our society. So people believe that if you, as an individual, you work hard for your attainment here in our society. We also have an economic structure of capitalism. So everyone, if you work hard, you have the opportunity to earn money, and then you're able to, make money and use money. Okay. We also have the structure of democracy, where each person has the opportunity to vote if they're able to use that right. We also have consumerism, where people have the right, because they've earned their money, they have the right to spend their money as they fit. And we also have the idea of meritocracy, where if everyone has, if they just try hard enough, they can just make it. So these ideologies that are conveyed in our society are seen in many ways. We see them in film, we see them in plays, schools, textbooks. We also hear them in political speeches that we hear, different celebrations and customs that we're trained in from early life. We hear it in the words and phrases of books that we read, and so much more. So again, these ideologies can create barriers, because if you're not part of the dominant class, the idea that if you work hard, you can get in doesn't always fit, okay? Next slide, please. It's important to know that the dominant group has privilege. And if you're not part of the dominant group and you need access and you need the resources in society in order to enjoy what society has to offer, for example, the right to vote, education, employment, marriage, you need the legislation to provide the access if you're not part of the dominant class. So this is why we celebrate ADA today, because we understand that a lot of the times the legislation, it helps us give us access. It doesn't give you the necessarily ability to obtain, but it definitely gives you the opportunity to at least get access, okay? If we look at the slide, we see some incredible legislative milestones. Brown versus Board of Education, for example. Ruby Bridges was the first Black student to desegregate schools in Louisiana in 1960. Look at that, 1960. It took a long time. I mean, our society was created in the 1700s, right? So it took until 1960 for her to actually desegregate schools. And it doesn't necessarily mean that she had a great experience. Affirmative action was put in place in the early 60s so that people from minority backgrounds could have access. But in actuality, what affirmative action legislation did, it really allowed for white women to have access to federal and state employment, and really did not work to the full extent that it was initially intended. Also, affirmative action did not work within private companies, and that's important to understand. So if you have legislation, it really needs to be global and work for all arenas, not just state and federal, but also private industry. We also had the Civil Rights Act of 1965, which exactly finally allowed Black people, men and women, to vote, compared to white women in 1920. And of course, men had that right, white men had that right way before women, and Black men and women had the right to do that. Title IX of 1972, again, gave a more access to women who were facing discrimination within the workplace and other environments. Section 504 helped people go to college that had disabilities. You had to be a qualified student to gain entrance into colleges and universities, but also gave the opportunity for college and universities to kind of relook and rethink, what does universal access really mean? And how do we support people with disabilities who want to go into careers and become gainfully employed? And there's been so many other legislations that's listed here. And the idea is that, again, in order to have access, you need legislation to put forth that level of access. The last one I want to talk about, I just want to highlight really quickly here, is IDEA. That legislation really helped a lot of students with disabilities actually achieve the access to elementary and secondary education. Prior to ADA implementation, only 1 out of 4 students with disabilities were educated in the elementary and secondary years. Just think about that. In 1975, we only had about 1 student out of 4. Again, these legislations really helps access. The last one I want to highlight is same-sex marriage. I mean, this is the most recent legislation that we've witnessed. And again, that allow people, regardless of your sexual orientation, to actually marry someone that you care about, regardless of what their gender is and what they look like. So just keep in mind, access does not mean obtainment, and it's important to understand what does privilege really mean here in our society. So privilege is male privilege, heterosexual privilege, able-bodied privilege. So these are the things that we're facing, and of course, white privilege. I like to talk about privilege in the sense of what McIntosh talks about. McIntosh talks about white privilege, and I can kind of assign this to all aspects of privilege as that backpack, the invisible backpack that someone who has majority status walks around with. If the person has the status, they don't really think about, oh, I have this status and I'm privileged, okay? They just know that they're walking around and they're just open to all the opportunities of life. It's important for us to understand that it's not an invisible backpack. It's really a backpack that most people who are part of minority groups carry. It's like those stones and boulders that we carry as we try to face everything that makes life so important, okay? Our level of development with our self-esteem, our self-worth, the peer support that we get from our neighbors and friends and family, how people view you in society when you walk down the street. You know, do they see you by your race? Do they see you by your disability status? Or do they see you as a person? The positive expectations that, yes, if you go to school, you're going to achieve. Yes, if you apply for a job and you're qualified, you're going to get it. Those expectations are not always there with someone who has minority status. And that's what that backpack really entails. They have to get themselves equipped and ready, but also they have to carry that weight around all the time. And that becomes very challenging. Also, having the minority status, you worry about, where do you travel to? Will you get pulled over in a car because of racial profiling? Will you be able to go to an area and not have to worry if they're going to treat you a different way? Or even if you are a person that uses a wheelchair, can you get into that restaurant? Will it be accessible for you? Can you fit into the bathroom? Let's say you're a person who have a larger size. Will you be able to sit on get into that stall comfortably? People have to worry about these things. That is really hard. You want to have a sense of belonging. You want to feel safe. You want to feel that you are an American and you have access like everybody else. Next slide. White supremacy. This is a really interesting slide that I got from Robin DiAngelo's book, White Fragility. And it's a really good book. I think that you guys should really take a look at it. But what I wanted to convey here is to let you understand that when we talk about white supremacy, it's white control. We're not thinking about those people that wore hoods in the Ku Klux Klan. Yes, that did happen, but we're talking about white supremacy now in 2020. And what that really means is that the person needs to understand who's in control and what's happening. As we look at D'Angelo's information, we see here that the data that she acquired from 2016 and 2017 basically looks at wealth and power within our meritocracy structure here in the United States. So essentially what she's trying to convey here is that most aspects of industry within the United States is controlled by white individuals. And most of the time it's white men, okay? It's very powerful. So the richest people in the world and also in our country are white men. Governments, if you look here, the Congress is about 90% white. The United States governors at this point in 2016 and 2017 were 90%, 96% white. Military advisors were mostly white. If we look at the media, and people that control what we see on television is mostly white. People that we see controlling what kind of books we read are mostly white. People decide on what type of news you hear. So if you hear news on local television like Channel 2, or you click into CNN, are controlled by mostly white individuals. People who decide what kind of music you listen on the radio or music that you download is controlled by mostly white individuals. People who direct films that you love to see are controlled by mostly white individuals and also controlled by mostly white men. Also, for us that are working in a college, if we look at education, most of the teachers that we see in elementary school or high school are mostly white. If we look at college professors, most of the college professors, about 84% of college professors are white. So again, if we look at the entertainment and sports, okay, most sports owners are mostly white, especially in the NFL. And think about this, most of the NFL players are minorities, okay? Also, I just heard a report yesterday that 59 NFL players are infected with the coronavirus. And at this point, we're pushing for reopenings and we're pushing for more sports, but we also have to recognize that the pandemic is affecting people of minority status. It's so important to understand that. So again, systems of oppressions are deeply rooted and legislation helps, but again, it doesn't provide equality. Next slide, please. So again, we're going to talk about looking at more comprehensive stats. These are the unemployment rates looking from last month. So they're very new, taken from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And again, you see by race and gender, whites have the lowest unemployment rate compared to other minority groups. The highest rate is for persons with disabilities. It's shocking, 16.5% of people with disabilities are unemployed. So it makes it very difficult for this group to get gainful employment, especially now in the midst of a pandemic. Also, if we look at ethnic groups that are highly affected, Blacks, especially Black men and women, are really, really suffering in the sense of the high unemployment rate. Then the next level as we go through ethnicity is Hispanic, then Asian. So it's really, really overwhelming. So when we look at the combination of race and gender, which I just spoke about, Black men are at challenge, Black women, but also Hispanic women, okay, have a high unemployment rate. So we have to take a look, why is that happening? Well, it's important to look at occupations. Let's talk about the type of jobs that these individuals are losing during this pandemic era. Some of the jobs are within the service industry, hotel and entertainment industry, manufacturing jobs, farming and agriculture. So all these jobs that were lost in the pandemic greatly affect people who are racial minorities and gender minorities. Next slide, please. So LGBTQI group, again, is the most heavily affected group out of all the groups that we're talking about today. And it's important to know that this group has the least number of protections compared to all the other groups I've just described. So if you look at this population, about 4.5% of the population identifies with this group. We will say that that's really a low reporting rate. For this group, it's very dangerous to actually report your status. You're faced with great oppression, violence, death, and discrimination. So not all participants of this group is willing to share their membership. So again, some of the stats that we have are shocking, but could be a greater number because not all people that identify with this group are actually reporting their true statistics. They have fear of oppression. So again, you can see that, males, white males is about 42%, 58% in women. Again, we have a lot of membership of this group are parents raising children. So by race, 58% of this population is LGBTQI. We have the next highest rate is Latinos in this group. Then we have Blacks, 5% is about mixed race, 2% Asian, Native American is about 1%, and 1% Hawaiian and Pacific Islander. Again, for social economic indicators for this group, we have more people unemployed in this group compared to their non-membership peers. In this group, we have more people uninsured, so they're not receiving medical coverage. And this is an issue, especially for the transgender group, who really want to have the correct health assignment. They want to have good medical care and have supportive doctors that's going to understand their psychological as well as physiological medical needs. In this group, they have the highest incidence of food insecurity. So they're hungry. We're not even talking about, do they have the ability to even apply for services to get food? We just know they're hungry, period. They have more poverty than any other group that we've just described. So they also experience legal inequality and employment discrimination. So that helps in contributing to their high unemployment rate compared to their non-peers. So we know that it's a risk to come out in the workplace, and Gerald, and this is the recent Supreme Court case, Gerald Bostock came out and to his company because he wanted to play in a softball league, and he was fired. And the Supreme Court just upheld this landmarking case. So hopefully there will be more legislation that's written to kind of give this population more legal supports than they have right now. Next slide, please. So I have additional statistics for this group. So let's talk about transgendered individuals, because again, the level of oppression for this group is quite high. So they face poverty, discrimination, and violence. So I want to give an example. Rita Hester was a great advocate for the transgender population. You probably haven't even heard of her. She died in 1988. And essentially she really promoted propelled the transgender group to speaking up, getting rights, and also an awareness for all of us to know that not everyone is born with the right gender identity. And for those people who need to make sure that that's in place, they should have the right to do so. So in a more recently talking about unfortunate death in a more college setting, I'm sure a lot of you remember the case in New Jersey back in 2012 with Tyler Clemente. who basically died because he was outed out by his college roommate while having a sexual intercourse, and he posted that on the internet. So again, for people who are gay, transgendered, and have a minority status, it's very risky. It's not even just talking about getting access in the environment. It's really talking about being able to stay alive and healthy because of the level of oppression and discrimination that's faced. Okay, so some other things I want you to know, because I'm running out of my time. It's important to know that this group has a high incidence of homelessness. Unfortunately, within the last 12 months, they have a high incidence of not having a place to live. The True Colors Foundation that was started by Cindy Laufer really tries to help transgendered youth in trying to find secure and safe housing and homes so that they can feel supported. Now, it's important to understand that a lot of identification regarding your sexual orientation happens, in adolescence. And at the same time, you're trying to figure out who you are, your level of education, how do you fit, the conflicts that parents may have. It's a challenge. So, we have a lot of transgender youth on the street, and it's important for them to have a place of safety. So there's a lot of services that are available, just so we have to get it to that population. Also, transgender people also report about being fired at a higher rate than their non-peers. They talk about being denied promotions or just being mistreated in the workplace because of their gender identification. One of the other descriptors I want to talk about that's really shocking is being harassed or oppressed within public accommodation. So think about going to a local store, having to use a restroom as a transgender person, and someone saying to you, no, you can't use this bathroom. Essentially, this group has faced a lot of oppression, and they were physically attacked because of their sexual orientation or their gender identification. So essentially, another really difficult statistic to show here is also the suicide rates for this group. They have a 9 times higher suicide rate compared to their non-peers because of the level of oppression and trauma that they experience. And that's really shocking. So as a psychologist, I say to people that when you have these levels of identities and you feel the level of oppression within your society that you live in, you're wearing that backpack. You're wearing those stones and those bricks, and it makes it a lot higher for you to kind of assimilate within society. Next and last slide. So I just want to highlight here the statistics for people with disabilities. And I think the one thing I want you to know, because of this pandemic, about 1 out of 5 people lost their jobs with a disability. Over 1 million jobs were lost for people with disabilities in the pandemic. And more importantly, from the looking at the comparison from 2019 to 2020, the unemployment rate in 2019 was about over 7%. The unemployment rate for people with disabilities now in 2020, June 2020, is 16.5%. It doubled, okay? So what I'm trying to spotlight here is, yes, legislation is important. We're so happy for the legislation, but it's not enough. So that concludes my section of trying to introduce the diverse aspects of what people with disabilities look like. I know it's fast, but we just wanted to highlight that. So it's now my opportunity, my pleasure to introduce these wonderful speakers who are going to talk to you about social justice and where do we need to go from ADA. First, I would like to introduce Dr. Simi Linton. She's an author, professor, writer, arts advocate, and my inspiration. I worked with Dr. Linton. She was my instructor in 1996 when I started my career in disability. She encouraged me and taught me what is the psychological aspect of disability and how you can overcome and still achieve. So Dr. Linton is here to present. And her colleague, Mr. Dustin Gibson, is also here to join us to speak on his experience. He is a community builder, he's an advocate, and he's here to talk about the social justice implications as well. Welcome, Dr. Linton and Mr. Gibson.
So sorry, I muted myself and now I need to unmute. Dustin, you're there, right? We're here. I think Dustin, you're muted.
Yeah, I'm here. This is Dustin.
Okay, we're good to go. So Dustin and I are a team. We've worked together several times and we will do some presentations. We will exchange some ideas and but as always, we'll start out by describing ourselves for those people who are blind or visually impaired. We always give a physical description of ourselves so you can get started and get to know us. Dustin, why don't you start?
Yeah, this is Dustin. So I'm a light-skinned black man with a beard. I have a red St. Louis cap on. I have headphones on as well. Have greenery and backyard behind me, and I also have a white T-shirt with the words "Free Josh Williams" on it. Josh is the only remaining political prisoner from the Ferguson rebellions after the police murders of Mike Brown, Antonio Martin, Von Garrett Myers, and others. He was 19 when he went into prison, and he just had his 24th birthday in November. So we are still fighting to secure Josh's release, as he was a part of a movement and part of a people that gave rise to a lot of the conversations that we're having now about police violence. And I should add on to that, in particular, my work lives at the intersections and the nexus of disability, class, race, and incarceration is a key feature in that nexus. And I'll pass to Simi now.
Okay. Hi, I'm Simi Linton. I'm a white woman with the COVID-fashioned gray hair fading into red. I identify as a cisgendered woman. My pronouns are she and her. And as Sharon said, I had the privilege of having her in class when she started her master's program at Hunter College in the 90s. But the majority of my work these days is promoting disability arts and justice. And it's in that context that Dustin and I have worked together on a number of occasions. So I'd like to start speaking about some of the issues related to the ADA, and then I'll hand it over to Dustin. And I know that at this moment, we all crave optimism and something to celebrate. And although we are here at the anniversary, the 30th anniversary of the passage of the ADA, I'm not in a celebratory mood about this. It is landmark legislation, but it is also a very limited view of what is important for disability, for thinking about disability and for disabled people's freedom and rights and justice. You'll notice that Dustin and I both used what is known as disability first language. I identify myself as a disabled woman. I do not use the language people with disabilities. There are a number of reasons for that, and I can refer you with self-servingness to my book, Claiming Disability, Knowledge and Identity, Chapter 2, which, although I wrote in 1998, outlines the basis for the language that I use and the rationale for it. It's a useful primer on language and the ideas on which it's based, on our choices. And While I benefit from some of the provisions of the ADA, I cringe when I think of the people it does not provide for nor protect, and we all suffer for the justice it does not render. While the ADA is supposedly structured to protect me from discrimination, as a disabled woman, I face discrimination every day. And I am a white woman with a PhD and elegant cat's eye glasses, which I'm now going to take off because I can't read with them on, but I did it for the effect. So be prepared. We are strong critics. We are uncompromising. But here's something I will promise. At the end of our presentations, I promise to offer you some words of optimism, some thoughts about what is encouraging and keeps me working hard for disability justice. So if I forget the optimistic endpoints, please remind me. So to begin, one of the major accomplishments of the disability rights movement was our success in convincing Congress that discrimination against disabled people is real and that disability is a civil and human rights issue. It was because of the shift from thinking of disability as something related to benevolence to something related to rights that the ADA was born. So at this moment, I am celebrating the disability rights movement for its effectiveness in convincing Congress and legislators of all stripes that disability is a civil rights and social justice issue, not merely one of caring and protecting people with disabilities. And in addition to thinking about what the ADA does not cover, let's think about how the ADA is doing as legislation. One of the provisions of the ADA is that it is supposed to protect disabled people from discrimination, let's say in transportation. But I was in court for 7 years as the named plaintiff in a class action suit against the city of New York for accessible taxis in New York City. The city fought us at every step, and although we won a victory after those 7 years, it was a very lengthy, tumultuous, and difficult fight. As for the subways, I cannot use the New York City subways. Only 25% of the stations in New York City are wheelchair accessible. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, I am a power wheelchair user. So only 25% of the stations in New York are accessible, and the closest one to my home is close to a mile away. Of the stations, so I have not been on the subway, mark my words, in New York City in 45 years. Suit has been brought against the MTA for inaccessibility and for the notoriously unsafe elevators that exist, which are out more than they're in function. Further, the ADA was written to provide protection from discrimination in employment. But according to data from about 10 years ago, and Sharon covered a number of these issues, employers, so under the ADA, although lawsuits have been brought to court, up till 10 years ago, more than 90% of those employment cases filed under the ADA indicates that 90% were decided in favor of employers. So employees have the short end of the stick when it comes to protection under the law. And only 31% of working age people with disabilities had jobs last year, compared with 75% of those without disabilities. And voting privileges. It's only been in the last, I think, 10 years ago that my polling place was accessible. There are still continual complaints about access in a number of different realms, disenfranchising just the population that the ADA has been designed to protect. And enfranchisement, as we know, is one of the key aspects of citizenship in the United States, often denied to disabled people. And Dustin will talk more about incarceration, both in prisons and in healthcare facilities, quote unquote healthcare facilities, that also further disenfranchise people. And although one might say that at least there is civil rights legislation that provides the mechanism to fight these issues in court, and one might also say that the failures I've noted all might be chalked up to a failure in enforcement or courts favorable to employers and transportation corporations. We could say that in a different political climate, that could change. But we need to focus on the underlying conditions which make this ongoing discrimination possible. We want to bring to your attention the more pernicious and insidious structural inequities in the society that prevent disabled people from exercising their rights and enjoying the freedoms and opportunities that Americans are seemingly entitled. And to remind us all that while the US might legislate desegregation via the ADA, this nor any other law can provide the mechanisms for integration and equity. And I distinguish between integration and inclusion. Inclusion means getting us in the door. Integration means our ability to actively participate and hold sway in the events going on within that entity, within the building, within the conversation. And desegregation, which the ADA covers, is a worthy goal, but it does not ensure integration, justice, and equity. And one more thought in closing. Dustin will speak in a moment about some of the ways to address these inequities. I would like to close by saying that the most important thing that Berkeley College can do as an institution is to focus in your practices, policies, curriculum, and cultural makeup. Focus on the ways that ableism is structured into the culture of the institution. The ADA and other remedies that Dustin will address will only work if we address the underlying prejudice in the society that limits disabled people's opportunity and growth. I urge you to think actively about ableism. As the current moment has helped us to think more clearly and actively about racism in the society and steer us away from talking about race, but steering us to think about racism, I urge you to think about ableism versus thinking in a simplistic way about disability and disabled people as a protected group, or in the cases that I've described, an unprotected group. So ableism, and Dustin will talk about that more, is the process by which the idea of disability gets turned into hostility, antipathy, disdain, distancing, dismissal, and disregard. So I turn it over to my colleague and friend, Dustin Gibson.
Hey, this is Dustin, and thank you for that, Simi. I too have critiques of the ADA, but it is not to disparage the work of the people that pushed it forward and implemented it, drafted it, fought for it, protested for it, but it's to honor the work that they did, and for some of them to honor their memory. When I think about the ADA, I think about it as Judith Butler talks about citizenship, and the modes of participation that are central to citizenship are the right to assembly, the right to move, the right to be in community, the right to deliberate. I think of the ADA as a piece of legislation that is attempting to provide that right to disabled people. And without that, we're not able to participate as citizens of any nation state. But I also know at the same time, as Angela Davis talks about, that diversity without structural transformation simply brings people into ableist, racist, misogynistic structures where they're enduring the same thing. So in the lineage of like the Black radical tradition of people like Fred Hampton, like we're not going to fight racism with racism, and we're not going to fight capitalism with Black capitalism. He says we're going to fight it with socialism, right? So when I think about ableism, it's not something that we're going to fight by being products of the same system that creates ableism. And in this part, I'm implicating specifically imperialism, specifically capitalism. And I can offer a way in which some folks that I'm in community with are thinking and defining ableism. But first, I do want to mention that the framework in which the ADA provides us, along with the Rehab Act, along with IDEA, and the other civil rights legislations that are anti-discriminatory law for disabled people, come from a Black radical tradition, Black organizing in the South. And that is very important to lift up, to think about college students, whether it be in Southern California or in Berkeley, organizing off of a framework that was given to them from people in Mississippi. And obviously folks in Mississippi are using frameworks that was given to them by their ancestors, sometimes in those same lands, right? So oftentimes what gets erased in the creation of the ADA and the implementation of it is people like Major Owens, that forced a committee and a task force to describe and understand what the ADA is on the House floor, right? A Black congressman. People like Brad Lomax, and not to romanticize the relationship between the Panthers and disability rights activists, but to understand that there was a struggle that was happening between them, right? That Brad Lomax is approaching Ed Roberts to start a Center for Independent Living in East Oakland in the early 1970s as a two-staff Center for Independent Living. Like, these are important histories that we want to make sure we lift up. And I'm also thinking about the Black frameworks right now in a time in which C.T. Vivian and John Lewis both transitioned on the same day last week. And the separation between ableism and racism and how we work to dismantle them. So one, I would say that although the ADA is the probably the most comprehensive piece of civil rights legislation in the history of the world, that it is also in the context of a nation state that is white supremacist. So earlier when Dr. McClendon Weir referenced things like Brown v. Board of Education or same-sex marriage, in the context of white supremacy, that means that schools are still segregated at the same rates, if not higher rates than they were in 1954, right? And for disabled students, they're literally segregated within segregation. So it's compounded. And that's like the true understanding of looking at this in an intersectional way, right? I'm also thinking about same-sex marriage doing nothing to diminish the amount of violence that is inflicted upon trans people, namely Black trans people, Black trans women who have life expectancies of 35. So to understand that there are very real limitations to civil rights legislation, and the ADA in particular, a piece of legislation that seeds on its face and surface that disability is an impairment. So with that, like, we introduce like practices and theories of disability justice that helps us go beyond what the ADA could possibly do, right? I think about the ADA in the context of prisons, where how courts have interpreted the ADA, it does not apply. And a large part of that has to do with how we view disability as a society in general. The ADA provides us individual accommodations for individual and stagnant understandings of what disability is. And it excludes people based on our level of access to healthcare systems, our access to wealth and class privilege. So in instance, addiction is covered under the ADA only if you have a documented history of such and you are in recovery. As it stands right now, almost every jail across the US, it's comprised of the majority of the people there having some sort of addiction. The majority of those people are also poor, and they're also Black and brown people who would not have a documented history of addiction because they were not able to access care for that addiction, right? So this is one of the ways that it excludes people. Also, by not defining disability as more expansive, we're also not able to create responses to understand like what it is to be disabled and experience other marginality, other marginalized identities. For instance, a place where a lot of my work lives, like right outside of Pittsburgh, a borough of Braddock, PA, which is a steel mining town, a steel mill town. And because it was a steel mill town, and because people like Andrew Carnegie dumped fluoride in water for years to evade taxes and all these other things, there's a lot of toxicity in the land, in the air. It's one of the, has one of the lowest air qualities in the US. This is similar to places now like Gary, Indiana, East Chicago, the South Bronx, Flint, Michigan, places that are predominantly Black and brown. This is also not separate from where prisons and psych institutions are physically located too, next to coal waste dumping sites. Places like Louisiana State Penitentiary that's situated in between 13 nuclear waste sites. So we see the same type of health conditions arise in these environments. And there's a long historical reason for the creation of ghettos and redlining and segregation that we can't get into. But to know that the prevalence of asthma, the prevalence of breathing conditions in places like this are to the tune of 80, 90%. But the census data will tell us only a quarter of those people are disabled. So when it comes to the point where we have a pandemic and you have underlying health conditions and you have disabilities and they're exacerbated by a pandemic and you are more at risk, people are dying. And those people that are dying are the majority of them, or the disproportionate amount of them, are Black people, they are brown people, they are poor people. And the places that they're dying are nursing facilities, congregate settings. And the reason that they're in those nursing facilities and congregate settings is because they don't have the home and community-based supports, which something like the ADA will not provide, right? There's an anti-discriminatory claim that could be made for the ADA that still places the burden on disabled people to actually do something about it. So thinking about this as a justice model, one of the things that we know is to have any type of freedom or liberation for disabled people, that it must not be US centric. We have a military in which has 800 bases across the world in over 80 countries. The US intervenes in so many different countries and inflicts violence and disability upon people. I'm thinking of places like Iran through sanctions, places like Palestine, where there's not enough actual prosthetic limbs and material going into occupied Palestine to keep up with the rate of people that are developing amputations. Places like Congo, places like Bolivia, who are now fighting for 500 Bolivianos per month in disability benefits, which equates to $72 US dollars. And it's not enough to cover bus fare home per day for them, right? So to think about this as a global struggle that we're in, and to think about the roots of the ADA, where people like Yoshiko Dart understood, and Judy Heumann, some of the architects and people behind the movement understood that this has to be international. So there's always been relationship with Japan, always been relationship with Costa Rica because of these things. So going forward, and it feels, hopefully this doesn't feel too scrambled. It is really trying to condense like an understanding of the delineations between rights and justice into like a very small window. And I can offer a bunch of resources for folks that want to commit themselves to learning deeper about it. But going forward, what I would propose and what I work and commit my life to is abolition. So it's the abolition of systems that are harming people, right? So when I'm thinking of sites of confinement, I'm thinking of prisons, jails, all congregate settings, all places that are purported to provide treatment for people with psychiatric disabilities, places that have traditionally warehoused folks. This also includes group home settings, places that in our neighborhoods might look like apartments or housing, but when you go into it, it's all plexiglass and there's minimal furniture. and there are 3 to 4 locks on the door, and people can't go outside and get a burrito at 3 a.m. because they are under constant surveillance. So when I think about justice and surveillance of disabled people, whether it's in institutions, in community, that is intrinsically tied to like the CVE program, countering violent extremist program in New York that is released after 9/11 to surveil Muslims, right? Or brown and black folks. And what it looks like where I'm currently at in Hartford, Connecticut, where 85% of the town is under surveillance from the Hartford police. So all of those are like understanding our struggles are like very intertwined. So when we talk about disability, it cannot happen in a vacuum because the way we develop it, the reason we develop it, how it lives in our bodies and minds is not the same. It's not the same for Black people as it is for white people. It's not the same for poor people as it is for rich and wealthy people. And abolition invites us into a process of not only destroying and having the absence of those sites of harm, but more so the presence of the support that we need. We've seen this in a real way during this pandemic where our government has failed to provide masks, clear guidelines, any type of PPE, and we've seen communities come together through mutual aid to provide that for ourselves. That is something that disabled people have done forever and have done it, and it's almost intrinsic to the disabled experience. That's part of the reason why I identify as disabled socially and politically, because I understand the context in which my survival has actually lived in. And I feel like I've over-talked my time, so I am going to invite Simi to come back, and I don't know if this is the time that we do question and answer or not.
Well, I thank you, Dustin, and folks, this is why Dustin and why I love working with Dustin. His reality and his wisdom are welcome at a time when things are very chaotic. I promised a word of optimism and to end off, and then if we have time, some Q&A. Here are notes of optimism. The public is slowly but increasingly understanding disability as a civil rights and social justice issue. And that is why Dustin and I present in order to underscore that. There is a growing and robust group of disabled people joining together in the fight for justice. We are more organized and more on board together than ever before. There is a growing disability arts movement expressing in images, words, dance, theater, and more, the wisdom and artistry and the values that disabled people bring to the stage, the screen, gallery walls, and so forth. And most significantly, I cherish and welcome the friendships and collaboration that I have with Dustin, with Sharon, and others in my community who speak so wisely and so well. So thank you all for inviting us to present to you today. And Sharon, you call it if we have time for Q&A. We're here.
We have time. I'm sorry for starting late because of technical difficulties. It is what it is. So Vincent, can you pose some questions? Do you have some questions for the panelists? Vincent?
Well, I'm looking at the Q&A.
Yep. Questions, Simi, Dustin?
Yeah, I'm looking at the Q&A until Vincent gets back. And somebody asked about the concept of ableism. Mm-hmm. And can she provide a resource to learn more about this? One is that I would, again, suggest that you start with the ways that I define it in the book, Claiming Disability, Knowledge and Identity in chapter 2. But Dustin, can you provide a link or some information on current definitions of ableism and their value?
This is Dustin. I just dropped one into the chat, which has the definition of ableism, a living definition along with context behind it.
Okay, good. And so Vincent, are you back?
Yes, the
Okay,
questions are in the open section, the Q&A.
okay. Long questions.
Yeah, so this is Dustin. I'll respond to one question, kind of asking about people not identifying as disabled or having a disability, and needing to do so in order to get supports. So I can maybe respond to that thinking about all of the reasons in which people wouldn't identify as disabled and them being very valid, to think about even back, if we're thinking about during slavery and on plantations, how people are labeled either sound body and mind, or the urge to run away being pathologized and created as a mental illness. Any type of Black freedom journey at that point being labeled as a mental illness, and because of that, you could be taken to an asylum, or thinking about the pathology of behavior. So, like women in the turn of the century, in the 20th century, being labeled as hysterical, and because of that, being sent to institutions. So, all of the valid concerns that we have to not identify ourselves as disabled is prevalent, like for us, but then also prevalent for people that were alive during the height of institutionalization in the country. So I guess my response to that is to not require us to use the Western language of disability to actually address some of the supports that we need. And our social services infrastructure, the way it's set up is you have to prove that you are disabled. And for anybody that has gone through those processes, you know it is very dehumanizing to do so. So that's one entry point I would say that we can expand at.
I just want to add, Justin, if that's okay. As a director of disability services, and trying to understand students and their needs, the other piece of it is the type of disability. If you have a hidden disability, like a learning disability, traumatic brain injury, psychiatric disorder, there's a lot of stigma towards that, especially the way society currently views psychological disorders. So people are not so apt so quickly to kind of self-disclose that, and they will suffer in silence, which is unfortunate because for any psychological disorder, there is treatment available, there's help available, and no one needs to suffer in silence because of the level of stigma and shame they're feeling through the oppression of society. That's it.
And I will say also, in addition to that, that within the disability community, if someone says, I identify as disabled, we don't, except in certain circumstances, ever ask people to defend that identity, to provide a diagnosis, to justify it. It more has to do with whether someone consistently defines themselves as a disabled person and does not, for convenience sake, sometimes say it and sometimes not. Recognizing what Sharon is saying, the liability of coming out as disabled to an employer in certain social and cultural circumstances can be a liability, and we recognize that. But within the community, we don't ask for credentials, and we certainly don't ask for medical credentials. We ask for people to identify as disabled or non-disabled. Would you go along with that, Dustin?
Yeah, this is Dustin. Yep.
Okay. Okay, am I missing something?
Any other questions you guys want to answer?
There's just one question there.
Okay. Which one, Vincent?
How does affirmative action benefit white women more than other minorities? Can someone please elaborate?
Would you like me to do that since I mentioned that?
Sure, it's
Okay.
not,
And you
I mean,
guys you can jump in.
besides the obvious, I can't help you.
Okay, so essentially, in looking at the culture of how affirmative action came about, it was about trying to provide access. At the time, the level of control with regards to state employment, federal employment, was done by the dominant class, which are white men. And to provide the level of access, because affirmative action was very much legislation that was fought. It was heavily resisted by the dominant class. So a way to kind of say to the law, to those who are regulating the legislation is that, yes, I'm acquiescing, is to provide access to women, white women, because at that moment of time, white women were considered a minority group. They were not part of the majority group of white men. So in actuality, what affirmative action was trying to create was more access to people of color in a sense of trying to get employment based on qualifications. Affirmative action is not a granting legislation based on race. It is a granting legislation based on qualification. So this is why white women were able to get into those positions. It's not about let's hire a lot of Black and brown people for these positions. At the time, it was about access that was mandated and looking at the majority versus the minority group.
Hey, this is Dustin, and I would direct people to the work of Patricia Hill Collins and Kimberly Crenshaw, who both helped develop a praxis of intersectionality that speaks directly to Black women being excluded in situations like that in employment specifically. But as we still have like a couple more minutes and no questions, I do want to say that we've been talking about ableism a bit, and the definitions of ableism that you would see is probably not what Simi offered earlier. And I say Simi by request of Dr. Linton, so just so people know that. But typically we would see that it's the discrimination of people with disabilities, or if it's more progressive, it would say the oppression of people with disabilities. So when we're defining ableism, because I did see a question about how would it lift all boats or lift all ships by undoing it, we're thinking about it as an anti-Black construct within and of itself. It's something that has relied upon and still relies upon practices of eugenics, colonialism, and capitalism. Capitalism in the way that our labor is even structured and our value being tied to how much we can produce. And for some disabled people and other people, we will never be able to work, right? Some of us will never be able to produce under this model. And then for the majority of poor people, we will become disabled because we have to work so hard in order to survive. So it cuts a lot of different ways, but then there's also determining people's value based on, or our worthiness based on our ability to behave. And behave is a white supremacist standard of behaving, right? It is for young Black girls, it's not rolling your neck or snapping your fingers in a classroom. For people with psych disabilities walking down the street, it's not talking to yourself. For trans people, it is literally just not existing in most public spaces. Or for people that are houseless, right? So we've seen vagrancy laws, we've seen what people would call ugly laws. We've seen disorderly conduct and resisting arrest right now. So when I'm thinking of ableism, I'm thinking of a system that is pinned by all of those things. That can't happen under a system where workers don't own the means of production and we are not in cooperative and interdependent spaces. As long as we have individual accommodations for people, we will never have collective access for all of us, which is required to actually have a real shot at freedom and inclusion if that's what we're looking for. And that just, it doesn't just impact disabled people, right? You don't have to be disabled to experience ableism. There's so many colleges and universities right now, and Berkeley College President Smith said that they've been online for 20 years, but there's so many universities right now that have fought people tooth and nail to not have telework, to not have teleschool, to not have telehealth for some medical professions, that right now they have to do that and they don't know how to do that and they don't have systems set up. So everyone is experiencing the impact of what it looks like to deny disabled people what we've been demanding for generations now.
And one hopes, first of all, I absolutely sign on to the way that Dustin has described ableism. The newer definitions make so much more sense. And I think we need to understand historically how ableism was defined, but how it has grown in its meaning and its impact now. But it is my hope that as a society, as we approach reentry, that people turn to disabled people for guidance and learning about what it means to have an integrated society, one in which there are inevitably, as a result of COVID, going to be increasing numbers of people with conditions that would qualify them under the ADA for services and protections. We know stuff that the world needs to know, and I hope that we are given the opportunity to be leaders in this new restructuring of society. So, Sharon.
Yes, I'm just gonna, we have like about a minute, I know we're over. I just wanted to thank both of you for your contribution to this workshop. I wanted to conclude by also highlighting the fact of universal design and universal inclusion. I think one of the most important things about all the legislation, but more importantly ADA that we just talked about today, is that when you take it to the point where as a society, regardless of your disability, that you can be part of society, that the society has access, makes you understand how some of the pieces of what ADA did really helps everyone. So I just kind of want to highlight some of the things. So I'm going to start off with curb cuts. So curb cuts initially was to help people that use wheelchairs to get around the environment. However, over time, curb cuts have been beneficial for people without disabilities. Every time you go skateboarding, every time you roll your suitcase, every time you have a baby in a stroller, you benefit from that. Audiobooks. Everyone likes their audiobooks.com. You like to hear the books in the car or on the go. People that are blind, visually impaired have fought for years to get accessible media. So you get to benefit now for that piece of advocacy when you listen to your audiobook in the car or on the plane or in the train. When you say, hey Alexa, hey Siri, and they're able to put the music on for you, people who didn't have control of their environment, they're unable to turn their lights on, open a door, you got to benefit from that experience from Alexa and Siri as you part of universal design. Every time you go to Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts and you have an accessible counter or an accessible chair or table, you get to benefit for those who advocated for the proper design and construction for people with disabilities. Every time you go to Target or Walmart or your favorite store and you want to go into a family restroom and get to enjoy the space of that, you get to benefit from what ADA put forth about accessible design in restrooms and handrails and accessible toilets and also accessible sinks. Every time you get on a bus or a train and you hear that conductor say, what stop are we at, where we are, you get to benefit from those individuals who would ride on a train or bus who are blind, who don't know where they're going, hoping that maybe the person next to them will remember to tell them where the stop is so they can get off and hopefully get to work on time. Every time you go to the game, the bar, the restaurant, and you see your favorite football game or your favorite basketball game, and you're able to see what's going on through closed captioning because the bar is so loud and you get to still watch the game, that's because of ADA. And so more and so forth and so on and so on. So all these pieces of what you get to benefit as a person without a disability is a universal piece. ADA is for everyone. It's not just for the person with a disability. And that's what makes it so important. I want to thank you so much for participating. I want to thank you for learning, and I want to thank you for keeping open-minded. And also remember that having a disability is not a bad thing. Being part of a minority group is not a bad thing. What makes it hard is the environment that we live in. If we have an accessible environment for everyone, it becomes a beautiful thing. Thank you so much and enjoy your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.